We were told 4. Good thing we found out.
So I'm Ken Goodpaster, and these are your judges. Let me read the paragraph we read before every one of these presentations. In this part of the competition, you are taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. Please make sure everyone knows who you are, your role, and who they are before you begin. You will have 25 minutes with a 5-minute cushion to describe the legal, financial, and ethical dimensions of the problem, and to recommend a solution that passes muster on all 3 counts. During this time, teams will be uninterrupted. When you are finished, the judges will ask you questions for 20 minutes. During the Q&A, both you and the judges stay in character, whatever character you define for us. After the Q&A, the judges will give you feedback outside the role play. Some important things to keep in mind: the ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important. However, these should be described in simple, practical, common sense fashion. Using technical, philosophical terminology or basing your argument on religious or theological grounds will be considered a serious weakness. Similarly, any member of the team reading his or her part will also be considered a major mistake, although you may use notes. During this presentation, every member of the team must have some sort of speaking role. Any questions from the judges or the presenters? Well, then
So we are Loyola Consulting Limited, and we are presenting to you the Board of Energy Transfer Partners, the company responsible for building the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Was there a reason why we hired you?
To examine the ethical issue surrounding the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, who occupy the land that the Dakota Access Pipeline is being built. Okay. So my name is Brian Pagal. I'm an Ethics and Compliance Specialist.
And my name is Lori Garrity, and I'm an analyst.
And I'm Peter John Pretzl, I'm an Ethics and Compliance Associate.
So today we're going to go over the recommendation. Starting off, we're going to go through the parties, the issues of the legal analysis, including taking a look at your mission statement, the loss of sovereignty for the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, and then we're going to present the solutions, the alternatives to the Dakota Access Pipeline. Our recommendation is to go through an alternate route. Right now, as you can see, the pipeline is going to go through this area, and we propose that it goes in the dotted line. So the parties involved: you, Energy Transfer Partners, the Dakota Access LLC, that is your subsidiary contracted to build the pipeline, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who grants ETP the permits to build the pipeline, and the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, who are on the land. Now, while this may look like an issue between ETP and the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, I invite you to consider the greater implications to the state, the United States as a whole, and just the world. So the main issue. The Bakken Shale is in North Dakota. Through fracking, we've been able to dig up a bunch of crude oil, and this pipeline is going to transport that crude oil to the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, and the Midwest. The pipeline goes under Lake Oahe, which is the primary drinking source for the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe. The pipeline is going through unceded territory, which is owned by the U.S. government, but is technically Standing Rock Sioux territory. So the government has the right to use it for any purposes, from farming to any commercial purposes. because it's unseeded. If it was seeded, then they would have to ask for extensive permits from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. The Standing Rock Sioux has considered the land religious grounds. There's also a big public interest in the use of land and the sovereignty of the Standing Rock Sioux. And President Trump has shown his support for completing the Dakota Access Pipeline as soon as possible. So in the lawsuit by the Standing Rock Sioux tribe to the government, they clearly say the pipeline crosses areas of great historical and cultural significance to the tribe, the potential damage or destruction of which greatly injures the tribe and its members. The pipeline also crosses waters of utmost cultural, spiritual, ecological, and economic significance to the tribe and its members. And to go over the financial analysis, we have Peter.
Thanks. So just looking briefly at the company overall, the impact this would have, it significantly decreased market performance, so earnings per share would fall just because of the backlash from the public and companies potentially not wanting to invest in Dakota Access or energy transfer partners. So the private cost, and this is just in the event of an oil spill, which there are high potential for oil spills when you build a pipeline, especially going through natural resources like Lake Oahe and the Missouri River. So the private cost would be the cost to contain the oil spill. Those are significant costs as well as cleanup. And since oil is the primary revenue generator and the primary product, a loss of oil would be a loss of revenue. So that would be very detrimental to energy transfer partners and Dakota Access, as well as litigation, legal fees, and the legal costs and repercussions of the penalties, as well as punitive damages would be significant, and we would have to pay extensive costs as well regarding the external costs. So natural resource damage and contamination as well, we'd have to pay some of these wildlife and conservation organizations to clean up the oil spill, as well as wildlife removal and repair. So we will physically have to remove animals, as well as repair the lake and Missouri River if there were to be contamination, as well as, like I mentioned before, loss of consumer value and public image. This would be detrimental in the public's eyes. Big oil and oil companies already have a negative kind of connotation in the U.S. just with the recent number of oil spills, and just big oil in general kind of has a negative connotation. We want to eliminate that image and want to kind of repair that image and make big oil and large corporations look appealing to the average consumer and to local businesses.
Spell check. No worries.
Kalamazoo River oil spill was a really big incident that is similar to what could potentially happen to energy transfer partners if there were an oil spill. So the Kalamazoo River oil spill, this was in 2010. And so a Canadian pipeline company, Enbridge, had technically, or specifically ran an oil pipeline through Michigan near the Kalamazoo River. And there was a significant oil spill, lasted for 17 hours, and it contaminated 40 miles of the Kalamazoo River. And so the impact for that was a $177 million settlement because they were taken to court, so they had to settle in court. They paid $61 million in penalties, $110 million on spill preventive safeguards and improvements that they had to make to the current pipeline, $5.4 million in unreimbursed costs to the government for the government to essentially step in and take over some of the action and clean up some of this oil spill, as well as they had a separate incident in Chicago where they had another oil pipeline that spilled, so they were able to settle that case as well with a $1 million settlement, and this affected a small Chicago suburb. But on top of that, at only the $177 million, they additionally had to spend $1.2 billion in cleanup costs for 4 years because it took until 2014 for them to essentially repair and restore the river to its kind of natural ecosystem, its natural state. So we want to avoid any type of potential financial harm that could occur from a potential oil spill. So this is just something we think that energy transfer partners should really consider when building this pipeline through Standing Rock Sioux territory, because it could have the same negative repercussions and the same negative effect from a financial standpoint. And now from a legal standpoint, just to give a kind of overview, energy transfer partners and Dakota Access were given an easement. So there's a affirmative easement as well as restrictive easement or restrictive covenants that prevent people from utilizing the land in a certain way. They were given the affirmative by U.S. Army Corps to build this pipeline through. And that was also given through an express grant by President Trump through his executive order that he just did recently. We want to also assess the Fort Laramie Treaty. So this is essentially the treaty that was signed in 1869, which split the land into ceded and unceded territory, which essentially designated the property rights and property lines for the Standing Rock Sioux and for U.S. Army Corps to inhabit the same portion of land, and it's all under U.S. federal law. So even Standing Rock Sioux is subject to federal law, which is why the executive order is allowed to be implemented. The National Environmental Policy Act is something that the government as well as companies have to take into consideration, essentially dictating that when they're constructing oil pipelines or things that could potentially harm the natural environment, they have to weigh the cost and benefit of that as well as look out for the best interest of wildlife and nature and making sure that there are no negative repercussions that could significantly harm nature or affect the natural environment that would be detrimental in the near short term or long term. And then as well, North Dakota Century Code, Chapter 4919, especially, this refers to specifically pipelines and common carriers. So those that produce oil have to abide by specific regulations and guidelines, and that's dictated in this statute. And then as well, the National Historic Preserve Act and the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. So this speaks to the Native American tribe. This is to ensure that they live on the land that they were afforded through treaties as well as through deals and things of that nature in the past. We want to maintain those relationships and ensure that they have a viable living standard and they're able to live in the way that they see is fit and might not conform with modern day society or societal norms. And then the United States versus Sioux Tribe was a court case was filed that essentially gave the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe land in perpetuity for a long time, to solely ensure they, through various legal lawsuits, that's kind of been taken away and a lot of their land has been kind of condensed. So these are just some of the legal implications that kind of set the framework for what is happening today with the Standing Rock Sioux and Dakota Access.
So, citing the Energy Transfer Partners mission statement, we believe a company is only as good as its people. Energy Transfer has long-standing commitments to the safety of our people, the environment, and our property and assets. Now let's look at the map. So here, where the pipeline is being built, it's going to cross more than one body of water. It's going to cross 3. What we're proposing is to build it up here where it only crosses the Mississippi River once. And as you can see, it's going to pass the Bismarck area, which is a majority white community. And it's not going to go through the sacred religious grounds and the water supply of the Standing Rock Sioux. Just a closer look. Energy Transfer is committed to public safety and the protection of the environment. Now let's look at some of the issues that building the pipeline on Standing Rock Sioux territory implies. So the reason why we use pipelines is to transport oil. We can transport them through a freight train, but it's a lot cheaper and there's less of likelihood of accident. But there's still been leaks. So since 2010, there have been 3,300 leaks, which has resulted in 50 deaths and 389 people injured. This is mainly because a lot of the pipelines around the United States are more than 50 years old and they're not regularly maintained. Or if they are, there's a lot of human error and operating the machinery. A lot of the pipelines can also be damaged just through lightning and earthquakes. So we see this as a likelihood that the land of the Standing Rock Sioux will be affected by a strong chance of an oil spill. And because of that, their drinking water will be affected, any fishing that they do, and then it'll seep down to the groundwater and degrade any of their soil that they want to use for farming. Other issues. So the Standing Rock community is already a hurting group of people. So The poverty rate of 43.2% is 3 times the US average. They have a higher childhood mortality rate, suicide, food insecurity, access to quality healthcare and education is slim for the Standing Rock community. And many don't even live in houses with electricity or running water. And this is because an Oahe Dam was built in 1958. And it was originally built to provide hydroelectricity for the region. And it did so, but it also took away a lot of the Standing Rock Sioux lands. And when it broke, they flooded homes and took away even more of their natural resources. So the Standing Rock community is already a community that is hurting, and building this pipeline is only going to harm them even more. And then to look at a loss of sovereignty, we have.
Great, thank you, Peter. So Energy Transfer is committed to operating its business in a manner that honors and respects all people and communities in which we do business. So this is essential to apply when we formulate a decision to take into account the mission statement and reflect on our values as a business, and what decision then reflects what we tell not only the United States, but businesses and communities in which we work in. So in order to analyze the people and which we are planning to affect with our ultimate decision, it's important to understand the implications of the pipeline going through the Sioux Indian tribe. So for an example, the Alaskan and Native Americans, this was a case study that showed the effects of what the government's actions and businesses' actions, how it impacted not only elders, but generations removed. And this often led to alcoholism, a loss of their culture, a loss of their community, their identity, and also daily feelings of loss. And this was, the exact statistics are in their binders that we have provided you, but this demonstrates that this is not only a one-time implication, but also something that impacts their daily lives. Also, historical losses reflects based on the generations removed, but people, not only the elders who were forced off their lands or forced into boarding schools, this also impacted their daughters and sons and their sons and daughters, so several generations. And currently, the Indians are still, and Native Americans are still having trauma and discrimination in their daily lives. And so I think as Loyola Consulting, we recommend to you that you reflect on this, that we don't want to ingrain this and support this discrimination, but yet be a business that stands up for these communities and minorities. And with that, the Native Americans have started on this healing process, and they've started these communities and these court systems within their land. And if we build this pipeline through that, that would disrupt that healing process. So these are common feelings for elders. One would be discomfort around white people, anger, anxiety, depression. These are feelings that we do not want to support. This does not reflect our mission and our value as a company. So as Native peoples, we have been knocked down again, but we will get back up. We will rise above the greed and corruption that has plagued our people since first contact. We call on Native nations of the United States to stand together, unite, and fight back. So Energy Transfer Partners has an opportunity to stand with the Native Americans and not fight against them. So with weighing the different alternatives, I'm going to pass it to Peter to sum up our final recommendation.
So we would implore you to reroute the pipeline, but these are just as well some other ways of one issuing or acting in a corporate socially responsible manner, as well as just some pieces of thought as well as you kind of make your decision. So the incompletion of the pipeline as it's currently being delayed is costing an additional $4.5 million per month. So as we're waiting for this mandate, and as we're waiting to complete the pipeline, we could have already potentially completed it by rerouting and getting oil to the American people as well as American businesses. So this problem could have been avoided and this cost could have been deferred. As well, to date, you as Energy Transfer Partners have lost around $930 million. And one way we think we can kind of rebrand the company and make it more appealing in the public image is utilizing rainwater collection systems. So an above groundwater tank, we can get 5,500 of these from Nuesco. That would be about 77.5 million gallons. It costs around $55 million. Great thing about this, the idea will cost you as Energy Transfer Partners because it's all tax deductible. So under IRS section 170C1, any type of equipment or type of donation or charitable gift that could be utilized as equipment and property towards a federally recognized Indian tribe, which the Standing Rock Sioux are, would be completely tax deductible. So 100% you could write that $55 million off on your next tax bill. And then as well, installation. Installation would cost us nothing because of these organizations. So we have the American Gas Association, as well as the INGA and the INGA Foundation, which do a lot of great work in the community. They're all based around oil and petroleum, but they go out and they try to make the kind of world a better place by doing that corporate social responsibility. Really getting into the communities by really becoming active, and essentially they'll build plants, they'll build schools, they'll do things to really show that they're trying to help the public. And it would just be something in good faith. The potential for illness will be catastrophic to this tribe, and so a way around that, if we were to continue with the current course of action, or even with the alternative, because it would still impact the Missouri River, would be to utilize these water collection systems, because it would provide them a source of water to handle their daily needs, cooking, cleaning. Water is a way of life. We need water on a daily basis. That would be the most pertinent need for this tribe in this state and time.
So, seeing the way that we're going to affect the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, I implore you to consider all of our alternatives in making your decision to uphold the mission statement and change the way that Native Americans are, the relationship with Native Americans in America. Thank you.
Yeah. We invite you to ask us any questions, any hesitations you have about our recommendation.
Any other spelling errors?
I couldn't resist, man. I'm trying to
Ironically, we
continue
are
this.
our finance
that's why.
witnesses, and that's why. Anyways. Can we?
I'll start. I think you mentioned, your name's Brian, right?
Yes.
You mentioned rerouting it to a different community. Did you say it was mostly a white community? Is that what you said?
Yes, so that's
So how do they, so that it wouldn't be through the Sioux community, so they would be okay with that, right? So they're happy about that. But how does that community feel about the oil pipeline going through their backyards?
So they originally protested that, but the protest wasn't on the same scale as the Native Americans, and it wouldn't affect them as much, especially because that area where it crosses is 150 miles away from the county, whereas this is right through their primary drinking water source.
That's Donald Trump country up there, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yes, that is correct.
So yeah, there's other issues as well as we're basically mitigating the risk because it's crossing through one water source opposed to three. And if there was an oil spill, that we have to take into account the water flowing through and affecting all the other states that the water touches. So it's the lesser of two evils of the different routes. This pipeline is essential for our economy. It's something that needs to go through, but this is sort of an alternative that is reflective of our conscious capitalism outlook, but is also mitigating the risk at the same time.
Yeah, our real concern is right here with the archaeological sites. So they would physically have to dig up those sites to put in the pipeline, and that's something that we want to try and avoid specifically.
Archaeological sites.
Yeah.
Like burial grounds?
Yeah, burial grounds. Yeah.
In
So tribal
your
burial
tribal
grounds.
burial
Yeah, tribal burial grounds, which have a lot of.
So you gotta ask the question, how deep does the archaeological site go? 100 feet? 300 feet? How deep does the pipeline go?
Goes right under Lake Milwaukee.
Under the.
So it's all underground.
If
So it's
in
going-
fact it went underneath, had to go underneath that river, where the river that is, I don't know how deep that river is, presumably 30, 40 feet deep right there, it looks pretty thick.
Yeah.
So
Say that.
the pipeline going that far underneath the archaeological site probably wouldn't have a problem with that site. Just a thought.
Oh, you think the Indians wouldn't have a problem with that?
It's-
Or it wouldn't disturb the?
I don't think it would disturb
Dead
the
people.
site. I don't think it would disturb the site. That's all I'm saying.
Well, our only.
The question I did you guys study enough to know why the company didn't look at this alternate site rather than going through the Indian land?
They did. One, it was going to be time consuming, but I guess they didn't take into the consideration that not going through and going with the original plan would result in public backlash and all of the protests and things of that nature. But then as well, Bismarck filed it was an injunction to stop the pipeline. So those residents up there as well took legal ramifications and recourse to prevent it from going through. So that's the main reason why they couldn't utilize that course. They had looked at some other alternatives as well, but I think just with the timeline, it just wasn't going to be feasible.
What some costs do we have here? How much of the pipeline has already been built?
80%.
Yeah, 80% of the pipeline. This is the last leg essentially.
All right, so do we know where it ends?
Yeah.
And where they finish?
So this
So
goes
far?
essentially all the way up to Canada, and the other one goes down to Illinois.
Right, so do we know on this map here where
What
it
they've
stops?
completed so far?
Yeah.
I think they've completed essentially, this part from here to here hasn't been completed yet. So I think it's about 80 miles.
Stop
Show
right
me
there.
again.
Where the map?
Where the map ends, essentially, where the map ends.
Oh,
So this would be the proposed, the alternative course. So this is where they have, nothing's been completed yet. So going across would be completing the entire pipeline.
so what we see
just want to reroute the
is
final
what,
portion.
what still needs to be built.
Exactly.
So they want
This would just be the
to-
final portion. We just want to divert that
Understood.
last portion.
What's the difference in cost of building the dotted route versus the solid route? Has that been analyzed yet?
It hasn't been analyzed. We don't have an exact number, but
There's estimations.
yeah, there's estimations, but it's more, it would be the most cost-effective manner to go along with the alternative, to go along with the alternative route, just because during this time period, they did just get the executive order, but previously they had wasted about 6 to 7 months of no action or no activity of building the pipeline, which resulted in the $918 million loss
So it's
at energy
cheaper
transfer.
to-
It would have been cheaper. Now it would be most cost effective to go through, but we're looking more at not the financial side, we're looking more at the ethical implications. So we want to act with what's in the best nature.
Our argument is that the cost of rerouting the pipeline would be much, much less than the cost of cleanup and all of the implications of this.
But you have the same issues.
Well, and it's
If-
also-
Cleanup's the same, right?
The same, the claim, but if your argument about spills in pipeline, right? What makes you think that you're gonna have less spills going the alternate route than you would going underneath this?
It's essentially a water source. So with the current route, it goes through 3 bodies of water, whereas the alternative only goes through 1. So that's mitigating the risk, because if there is in fact an oil spill, then the effect of it flowing down those 3 bodies of water would be traumatic for Energy Transfer Partners, not only from a financial perspective, but also from the company's reputation, as well as its mission. So its mission is to protect the environment, protect its communities in which it does work in. So by going through this current route, we are essentially doing the exact opposite of what we say that we value as a corporation.
So when I was in business school, 1990, I learned that our mission as the board is to increase shareholder wealth. And it's nice to be able to do that in an ethical way. But the question is so basic. How much more is that plan going to cost than this plan? How could we as a board make a decision without knowing what the additional cost would be to do the ethical route?
So also as board members, you want to think about the long-term vision of the company and not just short-term gain, but long-term success. And this route may initially cost more than continuing on the current one, but you have to take into account that every day that people are protesting, that costs a lot of money. The value of
I'm
the
with
stock
you.
has dropped significantly.
I'm with you there,
And-
but we don't have that number, do we? Why is that number missing from our analysis? How much more does it cost?
I can give you a rough estimate.
That was
Okay.
my first question.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, the current route would be around, I think it was 120 million to complete. And this would be
120
million.
million,
Yeah.
okay.
And so this alternative route would be around 180 million. So a $60 million difference.
Okay, so that, let's just say that's a drop in the hat. What about time? How long would it take? How much of a difference would it take in time? Because I'm assuming
Yeah.
every day that goes by are customers that are not getting our product.
And yeah, the pipeline isn't even activated yet, so no oil is going through. Time, it would take additional, I can't remember the exact figure, but I think it was around, 6 to 8 months.
Also, something to take into account though, we don't have very much manpower working on the current pipeline. So if we wanted to expedite the process, then we can also add additional workers. And the cost of labor is kind of a drop in the hat compared to the ultimate decision and rerouting and how that would impact the company's image, but also once the pipeline does go through, I think it's roughly like $1.8 billion in revenue each year that it brings in. So we would be able to pay back these costs. Short-term basis, yes, it would affect our quick ratio. It would affect our liquidity, but in the long term, we would be able to make that up. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the couple
Are
hundred million.
there any
cost.
other pipelines going through the Sioux area right now?
In the past, there has been, and taking that into account, yes, that is public knowledge that there are several pipelines through that area. But I don't think as
Have any spilled?
consultants, in the regions around, but not in the Sioux territory. These are old pipelines that have been through, and this is something that we definitely took into account when we came up with different alternatives for you, the board. However, it doesn't give us a reason to continue with the current route. It doesn't make it correct, and it doesn't make it a decision that would reflect our mission as a company. Just because other companies have done the same doesn't make it right.
So I would think a couple things. One is you can double wall pipeline if you need to, so you have protection like you do double wall ships, right? I don't know if there is a right-of-way issue on that alternate route. Have you all looked in the right-of-way issue?
There's no issue because it's land owned by state government. And the state government's perfectly happy with building pipelines. It's going to bring in additional revenue, tax revenue, as well as jobs for people in the area. So
Which was another question on the Sioux. Did the Sioux get royalties for having the pipeline go through their land?
no, we get nothing.
Why is that?
Because the land is owned by U.S. Army Corps technically, because of its being unceded territory. So the easement was granted by U.S. Army Corps to ETP and Dakota Access to utilize it. Technically, it's Sioux territory, but as well as federal government territory, so they have the mandate to say whatever goes, goes.
So our ethical route goes through a couple of different states that the Sioux route doesn't, correct?
Just counties, yeah. So this
Oh,
is all.
those are-
Yeah, these are
those are
just
just
counties.
counties.
Yeah, those are just counties. Yeah.
All right, I see.
So there's a lot of, another question.
You offered us essentially two scenarios here. The new pipeline up above and staying with the old one that's already in place. Are there third or fourth scenarios available, like staying with the one that's in place and revenue sharing with the tribe of Sioux? Are there ways to make it appealing to the tribe because of jobs, because of various other needs they have economically to stop protesting and start defending the idea?
We definitely considered that, but it's not necessarily about money. It's more of a deeper, the loss of sovereignty and effect on the people, their everyday life and generations to come. So you've seen in the past, casinos are something that we all know, and this has negatively impacted their communities. So for them, their main goal and interest is preserving that land. This is one of the few areas in the United States where they have their culture, they're able to practice their values and beliefs, and by running that pipeline through, we're essentially denying them of their basic rights.
Yeah, they're very, very simple, tribe, very simple people, so.
Is the pipeline above ground, except for the
Underground.
rivers? It's underground the whole way,
No, underground just
underground
for this
through-
portion, yeah, it'll
to
eventually
the
come.
sewer area?
Yeah,
Or
the sewer
just
area.
underground?
Are there any gas
Under
pipelines?
the
that-
rivers. No gas pipelines that we know of,
So
just
you don't have gas,
strictly.
they only have electric?
Oh, them, the Sutra?
Yeah.
They don't even, a majority of them don't even utilize electricity. They're very, very, very simple.
There's no gas,
Very-
there's no electric.
Yeah, that's why the water source and the aquifers are really important to them, because that's their main source of water, clean cooking. I mean, they still use like fire and very simplistic forms of
Is that
survival.
the Mississippi River or the Missouri?
It's the Missouri.
It's the Missouri River.
Okay, I can't-
Yeah,
I can't
sorry,
read.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, because that's one of the things is your route is going to put it through the Missouri River, right? And that's a much bigger river, isn't it? So it's still there, it's still gonna have a big impact.
Yeah, and you're correct on that, but so we're going through here because we have this, and it would go down to next state below. We have this river as well going across. The real decision, like Laura mentioned, was just to try and reduce the amount of harm if there were an oil spill. We think this would be the easiest way to kind of mitigate that harm in a sense.
And also, I think it's important for you as a board, if it was, the original dotted line was the original route. It was changed to obviously shorten the distance, so it's essentially the hypotenuse of the triangle. So we're essentially just saying, go back with your original route. It's not going to be that much more money, but in the long term, it's better for the company, better for the value of the company, as well as the support of not only that community,
That is a
but
valuable piece of
Yeah,
information.
it started there, but.
Yeah.
That is a very valuable piece of information. That was Plan
yes.
A, and this was Plan B. And the proposal is to go back to Plan A. Eureka.
Yes.
I might have missed it, why did they propose the Plan B then?
Plan B was, this is Plan B, this is Plan A. So originally, there was not only protests in the area
Well,
by,
going through the Sioux tribe was Plan A or Plan
this Sioux tribe was Plan B.
B? Plan B, right.
Plan A was going through Bismarck. And there was initially backlash by the community.
In Bismarck.
And because the Sioux tribe is more of a minority, they had more power to kind of push that pipeline through. But I think, as a company, we really need to take into account the minority and the smaller communities and how that's important to us as we do business and conduct it.
Yeah, to kind of simplify it, essentially, this was Plan A, and once they found out that the pipeline was going through, they were able to utilize like legal injunction to stop the pipeline from going through. And so they said, okay, our energy transfers partners was like, okay, we'll take the second best route, which is going through Sioux tribe, and go through. And the Sioux tribe not having very much knowledge or having attorneys or having that course of action to really fight against it, learned about it a little bit too late, and now is in the situation where.
But aren't they just gonna protest again up in the non-tribe community?
Whitey.
in waiting
Trump
community.
waiting, is that for it?
Trump Whitey.
Yeah, but there's always a way to spin it. I mean, people need jobs, especially in
But
this
the jobs aren't gonna
economy.
be very long permanent though, right? On those oil pipelines, they're pretty minimal.
I mean, they're gonna have to do maintenance, they're gonna have to build it, they're going to have to operate the rigs, and they're gonna have to transport and things of that nature. So, I mean, there's a lot of jobs and potential for members of that community, and they have the skill set to do those jobs, whereas offering
So
those
they're
jobs
okay-
to
But
the Sioux
that's the
tribe.
suburbs, right? It's
They're
not-
okay with
Yeah.
it.
It's not the main.
It's the suburbs, and then there's this extended portion that's away from the suburbs, so it wouldn't really be affecting any
But they're okay with that, or like all for it?
No, they're not all for it,
Yeah.
no. But it's just something in a way of
Yeah.
kind of spinning it in the sense that they would see the benefit of having the pipeline go through, how it would benefit their businesses, how it would benefit their economy, how it would benefit their state through taxes. And then as well, you have the legal team at Energy Transfer Partners to kind of get everything.
And your initial idea about the revenue sharing, this would be something that we could, with the board, discuss, that maybe in that community, they'd be more open to that idea. Whereas the Sioux tribe, their interests are completely different than that. So it's maybe economically, that region would gravitate towards your initial suggestion. So that would be for their support for the rerouting.
Yeah, the Sioux tribe is more about just maintaining their standard way of life. They don't have any greater aspirations of, becoming richer or wealthy in that sense. I
Just
think.
their heritage.
Yeah, just their heritage. They want to preserve that. They want to preserve their way of life because it's been a way of life in their families
It's
for
gonna be buried,
generations.
right? It's gonna be buried.
Yeah.
It's gonna be underneath those rivers, so it's gonna be deep, right? So the Indians themselves, other than those who are working on the pump stations
Mhm.
and doing some of the maintenance, aren't gonna see this pipeline at all. It's not gonna be there. So then you think about your oil spill, right? So there are, 25,000 miles of pipeline in the United States right now? You said there are 3,300 oil spills. Do you know what the total value, or not value, but the total number of barrels or gallons of oil that was spilled in those 3,300?
Something million.
Those numbers did not include the Deepwater Horizon thing, did they?
No,
those are pipeline.
Those are
We
the
only
small
assess
spills.
Right,
Which would be
right.
like 100 gallons here or 500 gallons.
These
there,
are all
something like
on
that.
actual
Yeah,
property.
because when you have an oil spill, you have a responsibility to let the EPA know what it is, or unless you want to get in trouble, you don't do it. But so most companies do admit when they have an oil spill. So
Even if it's
the
just
amount of fluid running through that 25,000 miles of gas and or oil is hugely greater, in my perception, than the 3,300 spills, all right? Plus the fact that these are hydrocarbons. We ourselves are made of, well, Earth is a hydrocarbon itself. We are made of carbon, right? So we actually, the Earth will gin up and take care of that hydrocarbon on its own. And that's not to say and belittle the fact that it might bubble up and go into the aquifer or a river. But the risk from a business, I'm sitting as the board member, right?
Yeah.
The risk is not that great as far as I'm concerned about what the return is to my shareholders, what the return is to the energy industry, what the return is to keeping costs down, energy costs down, to run the lights that we have right here, and a host of issues that are maybe a little bit broader than this. And while I agree, we can be very, very concerned about the Sioux Indians and what's happening to their tribes and the people, and I think that you guys were right, there are other solutions to help them. The risk isn't as great as what I'm hearing from this board member's perspective.
Well,
The
And
risk
just,
might be greater on the other side. I mean, if we were to take your advice and go north, do we have obligations to reclaim the pipeline that we've already built?
Meaning, what do you mean? From this point here, the alternative route? This route is
You said the pipeline has already been built up to where the.
Yeah,
is.
correct.
So all of that issue to where the other.
We have to get it up.
You have to reclaim that.
No, you wouldn't have to dig it up at all. You have just a different track.
So the other 80%, everybody's okay with?
Yeah, it's already completed. There's no problems with that. It's just this last portion because of the decision to go through Standing Rock Sioux Tribe instead of utilizing what was supposed to be the proposed course originally.
FYI, I am diametrically opposed to almost everything that my honorable brother just said. I find merit in your going back to Plan A. And I think if it's 60 million-ish, and we're talking about umpteen billion, that it's a drop in the bucket, and that's the way that would be my tentative vote on the board.
Suppose it was $1 billion more.
I would want to have more information.
I mean, you guys have already lost 913 million, you essentially lost $1 billion already, so.
Those are sunk costs, brother, sunk costs.
The long-term
Well,
value of the line is such.
We've run out of time for the role play part, but we've got plenty of time for stepping out of our roles and giving you feedback on your presentation.
Yes.
You're quiet.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like everybody here. You're very quiet.
How about you?
And it's no big deal to me. There's no excuse for typos like that.
Two names.
And two names in front, Peter John Francois and Peter John Francois. Wow.
Did you guys catch that?
Are you both Peter?
Are you twins?
You guys know?
Well, you know, he's a big representative of the
Yeah.
But Brian's name's not on here.
I-
Where's Brian McGowan?
He's our intern, actually.
Oh,
I don't have any other criticism. I liked your show and I like your position and it's all good. But no excuse for typos like
Yeah.
that. If I put on a show like that for the jury, that's all they'd be thinking about
Yeah.
was that typo. And then I would not be able to focus their attention on the other issues. They'd be going, oh, that's the lawyer who couldn't spell financial.
So you're still on the typo.
Yeah.
But because I have to find something to
He's an
criticize.
attorney, he's very
Because I like them so
meticulous,
much. I like the
analytical, and detailed,
presentation so
I
much.
can
I gotta
respect
find
that.
something. And plus I was an English major. so.
We get the attorney who's an English
Is
major.
the essence of the argument from an ethical point of view that, fewer rights would be abridged if you took your recommendation for the dotted line?
It's not necessarily about the number of rights, it's about kind of standing up for minorities, and that there's been a lot of, in past century, and even since before the 1900s, the Native Americans have not been represented. They've had their land taken away from them, forced into different schools, and which has led to other repercussions such as alcoholism and depression. And as a company and its mission, reflecting upon its values, which is representing the community, representing the environment.
One of the terms that we looked up called it environmental racism, because just with that small group of white people in Bismarck with their protest, they moved the whole thing, where they could take advantage of minorities.
Yeah.
Well, my only recommendation, I'm not trying to get back into the previous role play part. I just would like to see, I think it would help your presentation to lay out the moral argument logic a little bit clearer, so that we know what we're weighing against what, from an ethical point of view, not just from a financial or legal point of view.
And so ultimately, there's like the private, the sovereignty and the use of land. So the private use of land versus the greater good and the benefit for the American public, consumers, businesses. That's the kind
Kind of an ethical ledger.
yeah.
I felt the ethical argument, and I think you steered away from the religious stuff as you were supposed to, because that's what you were supposed to do. And I can see the religious argument clearly that you did not state, and I commend you for not getting into it. But
Is it-
the fucking burial ground? It's like, Jesus Christ.
But is that a religious argument, the burial ground, or is it?
All of the above.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you guys familiar with Jake, you're familiar with 241 down in Orange County?
Sure.
Did you guys look at that at all, the 241 route they were trying to do? Down at the north end of Camp Pendleton? And they, surf rider got involved, it was a really big deal, and they prevented it. But one of the main arguments was the burial ground. Like way upstream, the Indians got together and said, this is a burial ground, and they did not.
That was gonna screw up trestles, right?
Well, it's going to screw up the wave.
Yeah, so,
That wasn't the main argument.
But I mean,
But that was above ground. We're talking about
Yeah.
underground here. We're talking about going underneath the burial grounds, which Again, arguably it can't be more than 20 or 30 feet deep.
Yeah, they still actually have to dig.
Significantly lower than that because you gotta go underneath the river.
But you're not accounting for the radius of the spiritual radius of it.
Right, it's disruptive to the.
And you still actually have to like physically dig up that land to put in the pipe.
I would not want my company to be any part of anything going through anybody's
I
area.
would not do that.
They're too young to know about the Brady Bunch.
Oh, I know about
No,
the Brady
no,
Bunch,
no.
yeah.
They went under.
Oh, yeah, with the thunder and,
He's bad medicine.
So I thought that you all did fantastic, and I enjoyed the presentation a lot. Small nitpicky things, again, just volume, pacing, enunciating your words. There's a lot of power in silence, and so I would take breaks in between your points, because your role, each of your roles are very important, but opening and closing, those are very strong positions to be in, and you want to make sure that you're commanding the room with eye contact, voice, space, time, all that kind of stuff. So, but in terms of content, I found the presentation to be intellectually stimulating. I enjoyed the conversation. Personally, I would say go back to Plan A, because everything that's happening in the oil industry, just even from a PR perspective, being viewed as a company that would take this kind of step, you just don't want to touch that. They have enough money. They can just go back to Plan A, be seen as humble, be seen as we almost made a mistake, we almost stepped in it. And we were able to take a step back and say, no, our mistake, let's not make that mistake. So I actually come from gas and electric, and so I can tell you that we have all these kinds of conversations about right-of-way, about disrupting trees, talking to the EPA. These are really sticky places to be, so I commend you in taking that step forward, giving voice to the little guy.
I'm still curious to know how the other communities going to react to it all.
Now that they have certain people in power.
Because they have more power than, but the social backlash for the Dakota Pipeline has been extraordinary. Like, it's been amazing. Did you guys see the Les Clark Jr. son? He's a former military guy, and he went out there.
Yeah.
It was pretty powerful. Like, it's on YouTube.
There's a lot of veterans as well that come back.
Yeah, and did you guys consider the divesting aspect of it?
We thought about it as well. One of our alternatives that we should have told you about as well was just completely stopping the pipeline, but it didn't make sense. It would hurt. We wanted to do something that would kind of still help American consumers and benefit, the country in general, but at the same time respect their rights to their land. So this was the best option, and just all the money invested into the pipeline so far didn't make sense. 3/4 done, essentially 80% done.
Yeah.
It's kind of just hard to say, hey, stop. So this was
Especially in today's political climate.
And that's actually what I was thinking too, is, we're trying to be less reliant on the Middle East and try to be less intermingled with other people's politics, and this would give us sort of a greater independence from those issues.
But this company is coming from, the oil is coming from Canada, right?
It's true.
This is an American company, but the oil is coming down from
Are
Canada.
they
Canada
close
shale.
to the Keystone?
Yeah, Canada shale.
Same kind of thing?
Keystone is in
It's-
Texas.
Well, I mean like it comes from
Keystone is
Canada.
different.
It's a similar logic, but
Yeah,
it's
logic.
completely different.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
oil
completely
from the
different.
Bakken, this is oil from, you said earlier, the fractionation of the shales up there. The Keystone comes from the tar sands
Right.
in Alberta, Canada.
But then the final result for Keystone, I believe, is to be sold out of Houston
Yeah.
and shipped overseas.
This one is to
Well, that's-
Chicago, but it's
that's
staying in
one
the US.
option, that's not
Yeah.
all of them.
Well, it was, I think originally was, so this one's more about income for
Yeah, this one.
America.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's not
Yeah, this one goes to
interesting.
the East, Gulf, and then the Midwest. So that's where it being sold in the US.
You wanted to look at the lawsuit?
Oh, no, I just remembered a thought. You were quoting some of the mission statements and some of the values, I believe.
Yeah.
Every company has that.
I know.
Not all of them walk the talk, you know what I mean? And so, you're speaking to a board of directors, trust me, they've been around in circles many times. I don't know that that would be that convincing to a board of directors. They would say, okay, you've got a point, and.
That's why we wanted to concentrate on the long-term goal and value for the company, so
Right.
not only just the mission, but also from a financial and legal perspective.
Yeah, I think the way that you presented that is it just presented as like a little blip in their radar, so if you just see this as a drop in the hat of money, a little bit of extra time, this would be done in over don't have to worry about this 6 months from now, done properly, gone.
I don't know how.
It's when your previous presentation had less of the.
On the other hand, if those are our corporate mission statements, pointing the finger at the board and saying, this is your corporate mission statement, is pretty effective. This, our plan, yeah.
I'm sorry.
If you're taking the ethical moral, saying our plan is consistent with what you put in your annual report and what you've got on the wall of your office. I like that. I like that.
You can shake them.
Yeah.
Much as I hate to interrupt with obviously a very energetic conversation, we should be committed to
This is
that.
such a huge topic.
We must stop if we're going to be ready for the next group, so.
Great job, great.
Very good.
Good work, Peter. Thank you.
But we'll definitely take your advice on the ethical components to discuss with our tenant tomorrow.
I have a quick question for you. Being that Trump overturned an executive order and Obama stopped it, an executive order, could a new administration even have put another executive order out, then maybe their heads and then stop
They
it?
could, the only thing is the oil would already be running through at that point.
Right.
And it
Once
also
it's running-
depends if Trump's reelected, but that's
Right.
another.
Well, I meant like it could be 4 years from now or 8 years from now.
But of course, yeah, that's definitely something that,
No, this is
because
different.
that's a problem with an executive order, it only lasts as long as the
The executive
administration is
The
a
sad part about this is that it's
You should write it.
already done. It's a done deal, and
It's
oil's
the
already
done.
gone through.
Yeah, you should. I would say that to every team. Just use this competition to say we're part of this international competition. We have something to say. You'd be surprised. I mean, a lot of executives will write back and say, really, what do you have to say?
So we should basically
And
check
they'll
the
give you a
boxes.
chance about it. So
Yes,
there's no harm in
yes.
trying.
And well, the
It'd be
reputation as a
your-
company is so important, you can see that in other industries as well recently. But, it affects the way that the value of the stock and their market share and who wants to do business with them and
Perceptions are
who wants to work for them. You want to attract the highest or the best quality candidates and retention levels. So that's another important kind of facet to it on top of the ethical implications.
Yeah, this is pretty much the same argument with Keystone, but this one got so much more attention. I guess, because it was good.
I think it's just because people pay more attention now with the pipeline spill, big oil,
That's setting up on
Yeah.
everybody's not gonna-
and social media, people being able to share videos and things like
This
that.
is
So-
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
I can tell you work in the oil industry.
Yeah.
Laura,
Just,
do you want?
just a couple pages.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Laura, do you want to take the lead?